Welcome to Brownsville Minute, a community-conscious conversation and a platform that provides information, wellness, love, and unity all on a digital platform. And our goal is to try to make sure that our community residents are informed, conscious, and that we are connecting the dots on a virtual platform. The Brownsville Minute is designed for everyone. Please join us with the Brownsville Minute. Well, hello there. It is so good to have you join us on another episode of the Brownsville Minute. I am really excited to present a conversation that focused specifically on the impacts of mental health. This series is youth led, and I have the distinct pleasure of supporting and hosting this particular conversation specifically about the socioeconomic impacts of mental health. Um, what does it do? Is it really relevant? And also services that are also available to help to support those in specific areas, specifically related to their overall improvement of their mental health. Today, I have the distinct opportunity of introducing one of the 11375 youth ambassadors who participated in an SYEP program that allowed them to create this space, this conversation, facilitating dialogue about what mental health looks like from their perspective. Here on the Brownsville Minute, we are open to supporting a variety of aspects of individuals to help them to grow, learn, and provide information. And this is absolutely no exception. What the pandemic has really elevated specifically for us is that mental health is important, is imperative, but it also lets us know that it does impact different age groups. It affects us all. And so having this conversation is something where we can definitely take a moment to learn about what we can do, what we should be doing, and also the not really the obvious, but just learning how to support one another and learn how to do so in love and having the tools necessary so that we all can become well and overall healthy. And so, without further ado, I want to introduce today's moderator, who will then introduce our subject matter expert that will focus in specifically on the socioeconomic effects of mental health, and also to be able to provide some resources to all of us to help us in our process. So, hello, Jolie.
Hello,
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. I am also going to bring on your guests. Hello,
Hello, how are you?
good. And I am going to say bye bye. Have a great show.
Thank you. Hey, Jolly,
Hello.
how are
Hi.
you?
I'm good. Um, Today on the Brownsville Minute, we will be discussing mental health and how socioeconomic status impacts it. I will be speaking with someone who is experienced and knowledgeable on this topic to help guide us through understandings and to also make us receive useful pieces of advice on how to live a mentally healthy life. Mental health is a very important aspect of life, and it is often overlooked both by society and by individuals who may suffer from it, but ignore it due to stigma and fear of being seen as different. And it is important that we try to destigmatize caring about mental health and getting treatment for mental illnesses to bring more awareness to it. And now I'd like to welcome our speaker today, Noah Cohen, and I'd like you to introduce yourself and what you do, please.
Hi, Jolly. Thank you so much for having me on the show. So my name is Noah Cohen. I have LMSW from NYU Silver School at NYU. Got my master's in psychology from LA Brooklyn, so a lot of New York schooling. Grew up in New Jersey, but now I'm based out of New York. I work two jobs, one as a private psychotherapist at Resilient Mind, which is a psychotherapy startup in Brooklyn. And then I work at Allwell, which is a home healthcare agency based in Buffalo, New York, but also has an office in New York City.
Thank you for introducing yourself.
Of course.
I will be asking you some questions about mental health and the impact socioeconomic status has on it to get your insight on the topic. So, the first question I'd like to ask you is, what does mental health mean to you?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jolly. So mental health, you have to break it down into the mental aspect and the health aspect. The mental aspect is kind of thinking about how the mind is and, thinking about the health of the mind. So that means whether you're getting enough, the appetite is good, exercise is good, whether you're seeing a therapist or not. And the health aspect of it is, kind of making sure the status quo and the equilibrium is there to make sure that you're, functioning at a high level. So, mental health to me is kind of a holistic approach. As you navigate the world and navigate each day, mental health changes and adapts. So it's kind of a dynamic term. It's not really staying the same throughout your life.
Thank you. With you saying how it changes throughout your life and all, what are the different ways that someone can develop a mental illness?
Yes, it's another good question. Mental illness can be genetic. It can be passed on from your parents or from grandparents or from brother, sister, cousins, but also could be from a trauma situation, whether someone suffered an assault or suffered an attack of some sort. It also could be substance or drug abuse related. So, people that are addicted to certain drugs or alcohol can develop a mental illness because of that. We use the DSM, which is the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, to kind of assist in diagnosing individuals. And, there's a lot of the brain, a lot of mental health that we still don't know much about. So it's kind of it's evolving as we go.
Right. Thank you. So since someone can develop it, is it also possible to like completely get rid of it? Or like have stages in your life where you have it, you kind of have been able to mediate it, but then it like spikes again, like waves?
Yeah, I don't think you can get rid of it. It's a matter of managing it and, understanding the pros and cons of therapy and medication, medication management, seeing a psychiatrist, seeing a psychotherapist. I think that people can manage it in a way that from an outsider, you can't really tell that that person has a mental health issue. But I think the person knows that they have it, and it definitely goes through cycles. There's different mental health issues and concerns and diseases that go through cycles, whether it's bipolar 1 or 2, or having a manic episode, or a wide variety of other mental illnesses that have their highs and lows.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that physical health and mental health have a relationship with each other, or are the two independent?
Yeah, it's another good question, Jolie. I think that they're interdependent, so they kind of relate to each other. I have clients that go to the gym 4 times a week, and they let me know the next session that they're feeling much better, mentally, because they physically took care of themselves, whether it's cooking their own meals, or taking vitamins, or going to the gym, or going outside for hikes, getting fresh air. I think it's all interrelated. And I feel like the more you're aware of your physical health, the more you'll be aware of the mental health. The mental health is sometimes a more invisible kind of thing for people. You don't see someone gaining weight. You see someone gaining weight, but you don't see them necessarily deteriorating from mental health issues as much. So it's more of an invisible struggle and fight. So I think it's important to manage physical health because it definitely impacts mental health.
I want to go back with what you said about how people can be aware of their mental health. With being aware of your mental health and knowing that you have a issue, what is your view on people who self-diagnose mental illnesses and do not have the resources to meet a professional, but truly believe that they have something that might be harming their day-to-day life?
Yeah, I think that people can self-diagnose, but have to be very careful with that because there's definitely a bias there. If you're diagnosing yourself and not going to a mental health professional, then you might not know the true ramifications of medications or therapy, or the best path forward. Someone could say that they think they have stress or anxiety from a sexual assault, or being abused as a child, and they're probably right. But I think it's important to get a professional opinion that's outside of yourself in order to diagnose that. So I think that people can self-diagnose, and I would say that someone as an individual knows themselves best than another therapist, diagnosing them. But I think it's important to verify with a mental health professional, and not just go forward with your instinct of what you think you have.
Yeah, but it is important to note that getting help from a professional is hard, especially since we live in a country that makes you pay for healthcare and all. And so, with that being said, do you think a person's socioeconomic position can impact the severity of their mental illness and how they deal with it?
Yeah, I would say definitely, Jolie. I think that access to resources and access to mental health care and medications, as you probably know, the drug prices for prescribed medications is extremely high in the United States. People sometimes have to go to other countries, Canada or Mexico, to get medications. So I think that socioeconomic status definitely impacts access to resources, and that can exacerbate symptoms and signs of symptoms for a mental health disorder. So I think that it's important to make sure that people of lower SES have access and know about the resources. So we do a lot of psychoeducation. So whether it's handing out pamphlets, or making phone calls, or advertising on websites, or making advertisements in newspapers, it's important to reach as many people as possible, because mental health does not discriminate. As you probably know, mental health is all over the place. Mental health issues, sorry. So it's important to realize that mental health issues do not discriminate. So we can't discriminate based off of socioeconomic status, because those individuals need even more assistance with access to resources.
Yes, I agree. People needing access to mental health resources. And all the stigma around it, around getting help, and around like acknowledging the fact that you are mentally ill. And I think going through the pandemic that definitely showed all of that stigma, and also showed a lot of people realizing that they should be more aware of their mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And as we know, the pandemic was hard for many people, and like, for example, made people lose their jobs, their houses, their savings. Me, for example, I was out of school for 2 years. My senior
Yeah.
year was my senior year and freshman year of high school were the only in-person years that I had. And I'm going into college this year. And with the monkeypox virus rising, I might be seeing myself virtual again for school.
Yeah.
And losing a job, houses, or savings, and this all leads to someone having their socioeconomic status lowered. Um, do you think the factors of being in a pandemic and having their SES lowered made people develop mental illness, or have the severity of their mental illness increased?
Yeah, I think isolation is the largest factor, like social isolation and social anxiety. I've seen with my clients that I treat that social anxiety and social isolation related to COVID-19 has obviously spiked over the last 2+ years. And that leads to an increase in other mental health issues. So maybe they had background anxiety or, more generalized anxiety, and now it's more specific to agoraphobia, going into large crowds or not wanting to travel. So there's some travel related anxiety. So it's really important to read up on the pandemic and understand the consequences that happen from a mental health perspective, with clients that already had, a baseline of PTSD or a baseline of a personality or mood disorder. And then you add on, 2.5, 3 years of isolation where they can't really leave their house. They have to wear a mask everywhere, have to be afraid of crowds, and they don't already have the proper social support system in place, or they don't necessarily have the resources, as we talked about before, to rely on those resources during a pandemic. They maybe don't have the technology to do telehealth or the technology to use the internet to look things up. So it definitely had a negative impact on the people that I've interacted with. And I can see from reading the news or interacting with more people in the field that, yeah, I mean, it's going to be a while before we get out of the consequences and the landscape that the pandemic brought on. So I think it's important to learn from the last 3 years and prepare ourselves, to pull us out of this.
Yes. As you said about social isolation, I think social isolation played a very big part in people's mental health, whether they like realize it or not, especially with all of the like debate around how people should treat the pandemic. People going out, no mask, no nothing, doing whatever they wanted, and also people like me, for example, staying home all the time, only going out without a mask. And I think this also ties into like the basic like atmosphere of the world now. And what are your thoughts on the atmosphere of the recent society and news, and how it's been impacting mental health among people with both a low and high SES?
Yeah, I would say that the violence and the trauma that we see in the news cycle is obviously not good for someone that is already susceptible to a mental health issue, or already has a baseline stress or anxiety. And reading about the war in Ukraine, or reading about super high inflation, or pandemic, monkeypox, like the new pandemic coming our way, is definitely not going to assist in their recovery. We do a lot of, it's called community-oriented recovery and empowerment program that I do at Allwell, one of the jobs I work at. And it's a lot about going to the community and meeting the person where they're at, and people are scared. People are, don't know where to turn for resources. So it's a matter of giving them the pamphlet or calling them on the phone. Just being a consistent therapist or consistent clinician for them is important. Because people don't know how to react to things. They get things from the left or from the right in the news cycle, and they just want to hear the basic truths of the news. So I think it's important to make sure the person's well informed. We do a lot of psychoeducation, so telling them COVID-19 is, and it's personal choice whether they want to get vaccinated or whether they want to wear a mask now. It's up to them. We can't force them to get vaccinated or force them to wear a mask, but we just educate them on the pros and cons of everything with it, and meet them where they're at. It's a lot about with the patient, allowing them to figure things out along the way with your assistance.
Yes. You said that you do psychoeducation on your patients. Can you go into what that is, please?
Yeah, psychoeducation is just like telling them more about the mental health issue. So if they have PTSD, explaining what PTSD is, explaining, how long it may last, the cycles of PTSD, and the coping mechanisms. So we do a lot of compensatory strategies to kind of help them manage the symptoms of PTSD or anxiety. So it may be showing them a video of somebody with anxiety and a way to think differently about it. We do a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy. So, they have a cognition, there's a behavior that goes with that cognition or that thought. And so it's how we can kind of work through that cycle of having the same reaction to the thought and change it slightly so they feel better and they can manage it better. So, it's important to show them how that could work as opposed to just telling them to do that. Yeah. So the psychoeducation part is just a way of informing the person more about what treatment they're receiving.
Right. So like a lot about making them understand what they have rather than just like giving them solutions.
Yeah. Also just like people like don't want to take a medication without knowing the side effects of it. It's the same idea with therapy. Like you don't want to commit to therapy and pay whatever you're paying through insurance or out of pocket for therapy without understanding why you're doing it. It's a lot of the why behind things.
And back to what we were talking about like isolation and like community. When it comes to therapy, do you think having therapy as like a group therapy or community therapy could be better in helping someone become mentally healthy instead of independent therapy with just them and a therapist?
I think it's really client dependent there. Groups are good for, obviously there's AA, Alcohol Anonymous, and NA, Narcotics Anonymous, and there's a lot of other groups. There's tons of different categories of groups. I think that groups are good in many ways, but they're also bad in many ways. Groups are good in that they allow people to interact with each other and have shared lived experiences. So someone that is suffering from a substance abuse issue can talk to another peer about the substance abuse they're also going through. But also people might not share as much in a group. So they might, lack the privacy and confidentiality of a one-on-one session. So there's merits to both group and individual. I don't facilitate groups right now, but I learned about it in school. And yeah, I think that as long as you have a good facilitator of the group and they kind of manage the expectations and the rules early on and the why, once again, like the why are you here for the group, I think a group can be beneficial, as equally as beneficial as the individual therapy.
Thank you. So with all this talk about like therapy and like, just seeing a professional in general, I do want to tie back to talking about SES and how some people cannot see a therapist and cannot find ways to ease their mental illness since they don't have the finances or just the resources to go about that. And so are there ways to treat mental illness without using medication or therapy for people who are of low socioeconomic status or people who simply just don't have access to those resources? And if there are ways, how can they help?
Yeah, I mean, we try to do like a holistic approach, as I said in the beginning. So people that are anti-medication or anti-therapy or just don't have the means or access or resources to obtain that. I talk a lot about like meditation practices or yoga practices, or, I give people different things to do with breathing techniques. You don't have to have a medication or you don't have to have therapy, but you have to know the tools to get there so you can feel better. I mean, people aren't able to manage their own symptoms by themselves very often. Unfortunately, that leads to a dependency on a substance or dependency on a maladaptive behavior that won't help them in the long run. Maybe it mediates the feeling of anxiety or stress short term, but with therapy and with medication, the ultimate goal is to manage the symptoms long term. So I would say people that don't have access to medications or psychiatrists or psychologists, they can practice breathing. There's plenty of free resources on YouTube or free resources on different clinical resource websites that the New York State Department of Health, they're great with updating their websites on different mental health resources. The OMH, Office of Mental Health in New York City, also has great resources. So there's a lot of free, accessible resources if you have internet. If you don't have internet, then that's another layer that we have to navigate. So I would say, as we talked about in the beginning, self-diagnosis and kind of self-management of symptoms is a challenge. And that's the big gap, as we're talking about here with mental health care, is the gap of available resources.
Mm-hmm. I think meditation is like a really like underrated way for someone to help themselves.
I agree.
Yeah, because I remember in my middle school we had this like whole period like dedicated to like, it wasn't just meditation, but it was a lot of like doing like deep diving into yourself and like understanding what you are as a person.
Yeah,
and,
so like a reflection or even like a journal, like people that journal and get thoughts out of your mind onto a piece of paper is helpful.
Yeah. And for the final question, do you think it is possible for someone to remain in a mentally healthy state for most or even all of their life, despite any hardships that they would go through?
Yeah, I think absolutely that's possible. I think that, I know plenty of people that don't see a therapist and aren't on any medication are doing fine. That doesn't mean that they're actually doing fine. It means that they see themselves as doing fine. And I think that, I'm not sure what the numbers are now, but a lot of people are in therapy and on medication, and, but people do fine without that. It's just a matter of sleeping well, having a good appetite, eating 3 meals a day, exercising, socializing with people that make you a better person. And I really think this discussion on mental health and socioeconomic status has made me think of the clients that I work with. Just from experience, there's a wide spectrum of people, socioeconomic status, background, cultural background, where they live in New York, obviously impacts their access to resources and their own personal history with mental health, whether their parents are suffering from mental health or substance abuse. So to answer your question, I feel like people can go throughout their life and not have to rely on the mental health system. It's becoming rarer and rarer, unfortunately. But I think if you have the proper support system and you're able to, do positive activities for yourself, then you'll be okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You wrap this up. Thank you for joining me for this podcast and providing your insight and knowledge on it and allowing me to ask you all of these questions. It was greatly, greatly appreciated.
Thanks, Jolie. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Anita.
Hi, I'm back. I'm back.
Hi.
I'm back. Behind the scenes, listening to a very, very informative conversation. I think that one of the things that becomes really important is normalizing just having conversations about what being mentally well looks like. And I want to thank you so much, Mr. Cohen, for taking time out of your schedule to provide us with the resources, because there was some tips that I was actually taking notes and actually wanted to share some of the realistic tips that you provided. So, managing your physical health to help with your mental health. You described, when supporting your clients, that they talked about some of the ways and connecting their physical health to help to improve their overall being at the time, have the courage to seek professional help,
Hmm.
knowing that at times it can be a challenge to ask for help. But hopefully, watching this show and watching other shows on YouTube can help you to seek out professional help. Some other tips about meditation, journaling, exercising, drinking something as simple as water, sleeping can help. But also, the one of the last things that you mentioned is to socialize with people that really enhance your overall being. I type joy because that was the shortest thing that I can put. But just thinking about surrounding yourself with those individuals who can help you, support you in your process. And it's really important. Again, when we think about the phases of what that looks like, everyone's journey and process is different,
Hmm.
and just being able to find a neutral space to help you to support that process will be one that can help you to get to a better state. So I want to express sincere gratitude. You did a phenomenal job as a moderator. I hope that you are willing to do this again in a different space, in a different time, or not, because sometimes it just one of those things. But salute to you, did a wonderful, wonderful job, and I'm really proud that you had the courage to go through with it.
Yeah, thank you, Jolly. And thank you, Anita, for the opportunity.
No, likewise. So, do you have any parting words, Jolie, Noah, before I bring you all in virtual backstage and finish out the show?
Um, Not really. Just thank you, Noah, again for being here.
Of course. Yeah, I would just say that what you guys do and is really important. I think that mental health has such a stigma right now, and people don't know where to go. So, Anita and Jolly, you guys are bringing light to something that has always been in the darkness for many people in the United States and abroad. I mean, we didn't even talk really about abroad, but
Mm.
just because the United States is in such a mental health crisis right now, as we discussed with COVID-19 and monkeypox, which is coming our way, um, it's important to destigmatize, as Anita said in the beginning, um, and make sure people know that there are therapists there that, it may need a payment plan of some sort, but hopefully they can find, cheaper insurance that can take it or whatever it is. Or as we talked about before, resources that don't cost money, such as going on YouTube or the DOH or OMH websites that New York City provides. So I think the biggest lesson I've taken from today's discussion is socioeconomic status is definitely a barrier in many ways, but it's not the way that it's how you manage your own symptoms and how you navigate the way that New York City and other states make resources available for yourself. So I'm hopeful about mental health in the country, and you guys are promoting it in a very positive way.
Okay, thank you so
Thank you.
much, and I'm going to say bye bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And so there you have it. I am again really excited and very proud of the work that the youth ambassador Jolie Riley and also her guest shared today, Mr. Noah Cohen. And one of the things that was talked about is the resources that exist here, specifically within New York City. We are a New York State based business, but these resources are definitely available, some of them for free. And as was mentioned, if you are receiving any type, if you have any medical insurance, check within your coverage to see. A lot of times, if you work for an employer, they do have um, a portion of your insurance does cover, and some of the experienced professionals do accept your insurance. You just have to check and verify that they are a part of your insurance network. Um, New York City has 311, where there is resources available through the Department of Mental Health, and also, there are some other resources that was researched by the group that I wanted to share. They are, specific to individuals of color that provide deepen connection. And these are the resources: Melanin and Mental Health, the Boris Lawrence Henson Foundation, Therapy for Black Girls, Therapy for Black Men, the Loveland Foundation, Therapy for Latinx, True Circle, and the Weight Room. And these are just some of the resources that came up as a result of looking for, and to support this specific episodes and the other episodes as well that'll be forthcoming with resources. You're not alone in this process. And so we want to encourage you that if you need to reach out, find someone to talk to, because talking, I personally believe, helps within the process. And as Mr. Cohen mentioned, some realistic tips: managing your physical health, taking walks, having the courage to seek and ask for help, simple things that it doesn't cost anything, which is being in tune with yourself, meditation, journaling, drinking water, and making sure that you socialize and surround yourself with people that can really support you through your process and love on you, because that's the reality. What we all really need: someone who can hear us, can love on us, and to help us through our process. So I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day to check out the Brownsville Minute. If you happen to see Jolie on the street, give this young leader a high five, because this was an amazing job that was done in presenting this. And you have to allow for our youth to lead. And when they lead, they do dope and amazing things. So, on that note, I'm going to say bye bye. Thank you for joining the Brownsville Minute.
I tried to stand tall, but I never stood a chance. How selfish of me to want them to see me as I am.
I'm over this, man.
I can see the envy from under the mask they're in. How could I expect the pat on the back in a place they wanted to stab
What are
me?
you talking about specifically?
Why do I wish temporary feelings could last again? Why does my future need me to refer to the past again? Naysayers checking in by the minute. It's eating up in my time. And then they always need me to paint a picture after I draw the line. I'm sorry. I drifted from the question.
No problem at all.
Therapy is new for me. I don't think I've ever had a conversation that I felt included me.
Well, that's why we're
It's
here.
like we define things that exist without meaning. But getting back to your question, you asked, what am I thinking?
Yes.
I think so freely as I stare at this ceiling. I think the poison replaced what's meant for healing. I think depression is on the other side of elevating. I think depression hides inside those that are celebrating.
I can see that.
I think the bars that we're rapping are building our own cage. I think my father never thought about me. And what do I feel? I think rage. I think everyone around me can hear what I'm thinking, so I never blink once or think twice about over drinking.
Let's calm down.
I think
Let's
it's
settle
humble
down.
of me to say that I'm the greatest. I
There's
think
nothing
so
wrong with
much of
being
me,
confident.
but I'm taught to never say it. I think my identity exists with multiple borders, but when they can't understand it, it's labeled a disorder.
I understand.
I
But
think the
let's calm
media and my
down.
social life are at a point of no return. I think they're entitled to just people that never even learn to earn.
Mr. Calm down.
I think truth
Calm down.
is one thing that I know.
Let me ask you this question.
If everything you think is true, how will you ever grow? I never thought about that. Probably for my own protection. It's funny how a view of yourself can be shattered by your own reflection.